Welcome to the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Join your hosts, three-time WBFF world champions and WBFF royalty, Alicia Gowans and Stephanie Ayala McHugh, as we explore all things female health, training, competing, mindset, and living the fitness life every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Queen Divas podcast. I know it's been a hot minute, and as you can tell by my voice, I've been pretty sick. This is probably the best I've sounded in about 2 weeks. And in fact, last weekend, I very nearly didn't even make it to the registration meeting for our show in Sydney. And then for show day, I couldn't do, because I had a bit of vertigo, I couldn't stand up properly. I couldn't do the gala walk with the crowns on stage, and I could not even do my awards. I always do the gala walk. I always give out awards at the end of the
Oh, you've been sick, darling. That sucks.
Yeah, I had a moment.
Good to see you. Oh, we have returned, everyone.
And I was
we
like,
are here. We are alive. We're surviving, but we're actually thriving. Just, just having a little hiccup here, a little health hiccup. And we actually want to touch base on some of that, like just a little catch up, actually. Ali, how have you been doing besides the sickness?
Oh, you know, it's so funny. This is the hard part when you're sick, Steph. I don't know about what it's like for you, because I don't get sick often. So this is actually the first time I've been sick in a freaking very long time, like a solid couple of years. And I find it really hard to turn up on social media when I'm unwell.
Oh, yeah.
I had, like, obviously in my social schedule, I had talking points I had to do, and I had to record a post, right? Post the show in Sydney. And it was a post about, like the diet after the diet, how much it sucks, how hard it is to reverse diet. And I'm like, it took me all day sipping 4 Lem sips, which you're only supposed to have every 4 hours. I had 4 Lem sips and all these soothers to be able to get enough voice to record the recording, right? I recorded it and I sounded, honestly, like I belonged in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And anyway, recorded it, posted it. And I actually had someone comment on it going, is your voice deep because of drugs? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm currently tiny.
What a troll. Oh man, if they really knew you. Oh gosh.
Question that.
Yeah, no, that's funny. That's totally normal. I feel like anyone that's right now that feels a little more fatigued. Ali, the whole reason why this year has been an off year for me was because of that. Like my body wasn't recouping, wasn't recovering. I was getting ill. I was getting sick, and I was doing all the things to take care of my body. Yeah. I was literally doing everything in my means to make sure my immune system was taken care of, vitamins that, might have been a little bit deficient, and just protocols with higher antioxidants, and just trying to really create less inflammation in my body. And my body still was in still lagging a little bit. Oh yeah, I was not ever catching up. And it wasn't until recently, which I do feel like my body has finally came around the corner just recently, which is crazy, guys. I mean, it's more than half the year now. Like we're sitting in, and if we really reflect here, which we haven't done an episode of reflection, which I definitely thought was a good thing for us to, quickly go and see how we've been doing the first 6 months of the year versus what these next 6 months will look like for us. We can't, just kind of, stall, which a lot of people do, right? We start kind of maybe putting things on the back burner, our goals that we might have set. So pivoting, like actually kind of maybe setting or, maybe analyzing, is that something still realistic for the rest of the year? And what have I done? What have we already achieved that was on that list? Which we have kind of gone through on our previous episode, but I think mainly going forward is what is next, right? And I think that's something also that we'll touch base on. But for today, we have a juicy episode, and we want to touch base on all things pelvic floor, anything dysfunction related. Ali, you are also going through some of these things right now since you are pregnant.
I think, look, let's start this conversation with a bit of a funny story first. The first time I ever really went, oh shit, this is something that we should focus on, was when I was training for powerlifting. Because do you want to know what? They actually have this thing, and there's a wall, well, where I was doing it anyway, there was a wall, the squirt wall. And the squirt wall is basically when you're in competition as a female and you
let go,
make a mess on the platform. And apparently it's very, very common. And I was mortified. I'm like, what the fuck? Like
how embarrassing would you feel?
And they're like, this is like legitimately, it happens every single comp. It happens with more women than it doesn't. And it made me so paranoid about whether or not I was going to be someone.
I was going to be that girl.
Then I actually went to my first women's health physio and had an internal assessment, and I had my pelvic floor ranked and rated for how was. And I know we've discussed this in a previous episode, you know, a year and a half ago when I was pregnant with Georgie, about the levels. So, you know, your pelvic floor is like, it's in an elevator and you're going up the levels, right? And it has 5 levels in it. So you want to have a ranking as close to 5 as possible. And I was always a 4.5 to 5. So I was always really strong, but they rank it in 2 ways. There is a ranking of total strength. So that contractibility that creates, you know, really great stabilization for the pelvis, really great, you know, bracing in your big lifts. It's that sort of stuff. That's your basic 1 out of 5. But then there is a thing called a, I'm trying to remember the exact term. I'm going to bastardize it, but it's basically like a quick fire. So you have the long duration contraction, which is important for the big lifts, but then you have the quick fire contraction. Now, the quick fire contraction is the ability for the pelvic floor to flicker on and off real fast like this. And that's actually not something that most women have. But guess what it's relevant for? When you are laughing uncontrollably, when you sneeze, when you cough.
Coughing, yeah.
Yeah. So that is the strength that comes from that. Now, when we tested that was a little bit less for me. So I was like a 4.55 on the strength. And then in the quick fire, I think I was a 4. So I went to the level 4. So I was still, though, on the scale of it, really good. And I can report that I did my massive lifts and I didn't squirt on the platform. Yay for me.
All right, Allie. But for those that do, it is common because, I mean, don't get me wrong. It is something that I have heard of. I didn't know about this platform, though. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That kind of gave me
a little bit of, they actually like, and it's black, so it shows up.
I mean, besides the hygiene issues that come with all of that, I mean, regardless, I mean, it is a common thing. So
that's what I was going to say. The moral of that story too is, if this is you and you're listening to this and you're like that woman that goes, oh my God, I do that. Like if I start laughing, like my best friend, when she starts laughing really hard, she has to stop walking and cross the legs. Because she's like, if I don't stop and cross the legs, I'm going to piss myself. So
I've literally pissed myself from laughing.
Right? So, and so this is actually a big and common occurrence for most women. And so, especially women that have had babies. So if you're listening to this and you're like embarrassed, thinking far out, that's me, don't be, because it's actually a lot more common than you think. And if you're listening to this and going, holy shit, that's been me. I've been in a big squat and I've literally felt myself.
Yeah, right. Deep, big breath in.
And I've honestly wet myself. You're not abnormal. And however, there are things to do to fix it. So I just thought I'd start the story with that, because I think it's a great way to lead into the fact that, hey, pelvic floor function and pelvic floor is not just for people to worry about that are pregnant like me. It's not just postnatal, concerns either. Right. You should be keeping this shit strong. You should be keeping
regardless
thing firing well before you even fall pregnant, for the people that have that in their future. And if you don't ever want kids, that's fine. You just don't want to be the person that squirts on the platform either. So think about it still, right?
Totally. And there's a lot of other benefits too, like when it comes down to having a strong pelvic floor. I mean, it just trickles down to so many other female things besides incontinence. I mean, it even goes into the sexual life. So I think it's very important for any female that, I mean, it's just not even planning to maybe even be pregnant. I mean, if you're just planning to be actively, obviously sexually active, right? Yeah. Like you want to have that strength. It's really something.
Control, right? And you want to be able to utilize that muscle
in your favor. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know,
So
look,
we want to
also plays an important part too with the organs inside your pelvic region. So for anyone that doesn't, know this and isn't aware, bladder control, your uterus and your rectum, your anus, are actually also all supported by the pelvic floor. So you don't want to be sloppy in any of those areas. Is all because it's not going
trust me. That's actually, leading into pelvic floor dysfunction. I feel like not just the lack of pelvic floor strength, but the activation of you knowing what that feels like. It's actually not really something you're going to feel very strenuous work when you're doing pelvic floor, exercises. It's actually a lot more about breathing. It's about knowing how your pelvic floor, it actually sits, first being aware of that. If you've never seen a diagram, I think it's very important for you to see one just to visually understand kind of how that pelvis even sits. Number one, right? Why is it called the pelvic floor, right? It's protecting, right, a lot of that pelvic region. It has a lot of other areas that were connected, like Allie just mentioned, that we do fire up. Right, absolutely. But this also goes into the big movements that we do, such as those hip thrusts that we're always, constantly programming or putting into our, exercises there and doing. Are we properly doing them? Most of the time I see these exercises being performed with no good pelvic actual thrust because that pelvic floor is so weak. And you can tell that individual has a weak pelvic floor, which allows them not to contract the glutes as good. So all of this trickles down, not just for, of course, pregnancy reasons. That, of course, is one of the biggest benefits to make sure that you do have a successful pregnancy and a successful postpartum journey.
It's also put underneath so much duress during pregnancy, right? So the hormone fluctuations that change the way that things sit, soften that whole area. And then you've got the increasing pressure of the growing uterus, the placenta, and then the baby. You think about that, your day-to-day movement has more impact on that pelvic floor. And if you don't have control over it to begin with, and it's already weak, your likelihood of having dysfunction post is really high, but also prolapses. So actually, let's get into that for a second, because prolapses happen for a lot of women that have never had kids, people that are lifting heavy. And this is the scary part, because as you get into the gym and as you start developing more strength focused lifting, you are putting yourself at potential risk for a prolapse if your pelvic floor is not supporting the main organs and areas that lead to that prolapse if it's weak, right? So for anyone that doesn't know, weak and dysfunctional pelvic floor actually leads to a pelvic organ prolapse. So it's where, and it sounds gross, but it's where all your insides basically come in your outside. Like,
they're like
down and comes out. And it's like incredibly uncomfortable. You literally look like you have a willy. And you can't do anything. Like, you can't lift, you can't do anything. You actually have to have surgery to have this fixed. And, I'm going to say it. I got a couple of girlfriends that have never had kids, but are very big bodybuilders. And they've had I've had two girlfriends have prolapses and had to have surgeries in their 30s because they lifted strong and never focused on that actual pelvic floor function.
But that's because they're not strengthening that. It doesn't allow them to strengthen those surrounding muscles, which goes into exactly what we're referring to here. You're maybe going through that joint movement and actually still pulling some damn heavy weight. But what are you pulling with? What are you activating? Is it traps, a lot more back rather than glutes? Are you actually really contracting around the area in the pelvis? I think that's the biggest thing. Some of the women that have pelvic tilt, posterior wise, have a posterior pelvic tilt or an anterior pelvic tilt, struggle with a lot of pelvic floor dysfunction because they don't really know how to contract or truly hold in, right?
And I think if you're listening to this and you're like, I just have no idea, like I have no idea, like I'm listening to what these women are saying, but I don't know where I sit, I don't know what it feels like I can't tap into that. I would say do what I did all those years ago and be like, I don't want to be the squirter, and go to a women's health physio. So there must be a women's health physio, and get an internal assessment done. And they will internally assess the elevator levels you can go to, both at rest, laying, standing, and in a braced position. So when you're actually replicating, if you let them know that you're a lifter and you need to know about that functional strength under load and in the movement you would be doing, they'll do that as well. I get this done, guys, every year now, just to test where I'm at and make sure that mine's still strong, especially because, you know, I'm having babies back to back, older, you know, there's definitely, and post, you know, like 2.5 decades of heavy lifting. There's definitely big reasons why I should be checking it. And I would recommend most women get it checked at least 12 to 18 months, right? So go and have it tested so you know exactly where you sit. Then what I would also suggest, which I think is powerful, get a really good clinical one-on-one Pilates instructor, but they must be clinical. They must be like physio level ranked, not some, you know, bloody multiple people in a room class. I mean, a one-on-one with a reformer, because you want them testing your pelvic recruitment. Now, I used to do mine with a ultrasound. She would put an ultrasound on me in certain movements. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because this is important, and most people won't even freaking know this. Your pelvic floor should be on in every single lift. Every single lift you do. It's not bracing, though. This is the important part to remember. The pelvic floor recruitment comes on first, then you brace on top. Now, what I found really interesting when I learned this, you know, would have been about 8 years ago, where I focused and honed in on it. When they were initially saying turn the pelvic floor on, we could see in the ultrasound shows the levels of the actual muscle coming up and then like pulling back up to the contraction point, right? And you see the layers to the muscle, you see how thick it is, you see where it sort of pulls up, and they can give you a gradient. So many degrees of pull, so many degrees of contraction. I was over contracting. And that can actually become a problem too. You can over contraction where you don't actually relax the muscle all the way out. This is super interesting for people because that becomes a problem when you become pregnant. Okay. So there is such a thing as too much contraction can't actually relax. And then there is no contraction or hardly any contraction at all. You want none of that, right? You got to be able to have a full contract, full shorten, full length and range. And you want just the right amount of contraction. So what I got to the point of was relearning and feeling through the ultrasound to show me and guide me under movement 30%, because you've only got to turn it on 30%. So
it's amazing that you're just, you know, and what you're to give on that feedback there, because yours was, you know, fully contracting and doing over. Mine actually is more on the over as well, just because I have that pelvic floor dysfunction where I can't truly release as good rather than contract. Contracting is no problem for me, but see,
that releasing feel like a real problem to you right now. It's quite protective in your lifts, but when you go to become pregnant and have a baby, that's going to be a problem. So, you know, I think the fact that you're aware of it and you're working, fantastic.
Oh, you know, and I'm having to address it because of obviously the injuries that I have going on, and my, you know, QL has definitely been one of the main factors of not really being able to fully extend and actually have a good pelvic tilt in my posterior chain, because everything has been really stuck anterior wise. And that pelvic tilt, going back to this, ladies, if you are getting stuck in the hips, number one, joint wise, you know, muscularly wise, your psoas is extremely tight. That is attached there to that hip joint, very, very deep into your muscles, into your pelvic floor as well. And you are going to feel very weak because those tight muscles surrounding the hips are going to make you overwork those muscles, which then you feel like you're working because you feel a burning sensation. Everyone relates or correlates, right? Like, oh, I'm burning. It's, you know, I'm actually having a workout. Well, you might be burning because those muscles are just over contracting as well. So making sure that you address what's isolated, what you can feel. If you do not feel your lower abs, this is also giving you a big awareness. I might have some pelvic floor dysfunction. I'm not even aware. It may not just be incontinence, like in not being able to control your bladder. It could be the fact that you just have a weak lower ab region. And that will be a, you know, kind of a little precursor of letting you know that, yeah, this is something I could work on.
sometimes feeling that pressure in the lower back too can be another sign of function and pelvic floor weakness, because the erectors are doing a lot of the work that the pelvic floor should be doing. So getting back to the ultrasound part on the 30 degrees that I had to learn. So I had to learn to actually relax and back off a fraction. And then I over the course of like a month or so, I learned what it felt like. So then I knew when I was going into a lift, okay, switching on 30%, now I would inhale, brace, then go through. So now my setup function for a squat isn't just get under the bar, set myself, brace. My squat, setup now is pelvic floor recruit, 30% on, then get under the bar, then sharp inhale, then brace, so, and then I hold the pelvic floor throughout the whole range of motion. Now, this is the really interesting thing. For a lot of women, if I told you, turn that on to 30 degrees and hold it, now holding it, breathe through it. So inhale, exhale, keep the hold on. Now, while doing that, move a body part, most people would drop. Most people would drop the pelvic floor, not be able to continue to hold. So this is where training the pelvic floor is really important, because what you're learning how to do is exactly how much it needs to come on, not over, not under. Then it's about learning how to breathe and cyclically work through while still having that recruitment. Then it's about how to put a load on while still having that recruitment. So it's not as easy and simple as it sounds, and there's a little bit more to it. So this is why I'm sort of talking you through the history of what I went through, because I think if you're going to get really serious about how to get the best lifts or the best performance, if you're all about performance, you should be doing this. If you want to be set up really well for a baby and post, you absolutely need to do this. And then for anyone that just wants to have great fucking sex, you need to be doing this, because this is the three big whammies for what most of our listeners are going to be interested in, right? Is those areas. And these are things you need to go through. So I would suggest the Women's Health Physio Assessment, know where you are. I would then suggest, looking at that ultrasound / clinical Pilates. Another thing I did was I bought the little, I don't even know what they're called. They're a physio-based air balloon, and you can pump it up with a pressure thing on the side. I would put it underneath my lower back, just on my coccyx and my butt just slightly up on it. Then I would actually try to keep the dial from moving. I would recruit my pelvic floor on the 30%. I would get to the right spot, and then watching the little toggle, I would do toe taps. So under load, this is how I taught myself under load, breathing through for 10 minutes straight. I would do these toe taps, and I wouldn't let the pressure change. So if you're letting the pressure in the dial move, your pelvic floor is switching off. So I got to the point where at first I could only do a minute.
Constant.
I built up
like a constant for the 10, which is a great tip, Ali. Yeah, what are the exercises going into that? Because that was my next, thing that I was going to touch on was, what are your favorite exercises that you've gone through to strengthen your pelvic floor?
Look, there's a lot of different ones, but one that I think is really good, because for women like you and I that had the original, and I don't know if yours has improved, mine definitely has, where it would come on, and then the relaxing it would be hard. Sit onto a Swiss ball, so that your legs are either side and you can feel your anus all the way through to your crotch on the ball, right?
Yes.
Like literally, like get on there and spread your cheeks apart. So the whole lot.
Like a big sumo, stance.
Because your pelvic floor is not just at the front. It reaches all the way around.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you, visually get a diagram, you guys. Like if you haven't yet, all you got to do is Google.
Asshole.
Infographic. It does. You're gonna understand what we're saying here. It's to support. It's like this big triangle that actually goes all the way across. It's like a castle. I like.
And then what you need to think about when you're on this Swiss ball, right? You want to think about drawing. So a good cue for people is you're on the toilet, you're midstream, big wee, pinch the wee off and hold it in. Yeah. That is the pelvic floor doing its function, right? Mm-hmm. Being able to control bladder and urination. That is pelvic floor function at its finest. So you want to sit on the ball and you want to feel that motion where from butt to front, you can feel it come up and
into the dome. Think of it where it's a dome up there.
Think about it coming right up, and you want to visualize it. You want to envision it. coming up towards like belly button, right? Internally.
Your spine.
You want to hold that, and you want to progressively be able to hold that up to like 10 to 20 seconds.
Yep.
Initially, you're going to find you'll probably hold your breath. That's fine. I just want you to activate it first. Then when you release, I want you to release the whole thing. So I want you to literally feel like it gets real heavy, like dump the whole thing down from the butt to the front. You just feel real heavy across the ball. You can feel every point of contact with the ball. Wait a second. Recalibrate before you go again. Initially, it's going to be a little tough for a lot of people who've never done this before, but eventually what you want to be able to do is draw it on, hold, start breathing in and out, keep it on, keep it on, keep it on, get your time up, do like 10 seconds, 20-second burst, then drop. Now that's for your strength marker. So there's the strength that goes, 0 to 5, and then you have your fast-paced, fast twitch element to it. And that's the flickering. So what you then want to do is on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. So draw up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, like a flickering, like you're just flicking the light switch on and off. You want to be able to do that. You're going to feel your shit get so fatigued so fast.
I was going to say, if you've never done this, you're going to actually experience a little bit of soreness. Yeah. You will on your first go around. You're definitely will if you've never done it. And you're going to get used to an adaptive, just like every muscle group in your body does. You will strengthen. Yes. And it's
get
pretty
stronger,
awesome.
and the endurance capacity of it will increase, which is fantastic, especially for sexual function, but also for incontinence. And you will find that your ability then to hold it through an entire range of motion will absolutely increase. So for anyone else then outside of doing like that exercise, that one I think is probably the absolute best one for a complete beginner. Then what you want to do, and this is one I always do, 2 minutes in the morning brushing my teeth, 2 minutes at night brushing my teeth. I do it while I'm standing. This is really important. We don't squat laying down, squat standing. So there is an element of gravity and pressure and everything on that pelvic floor, standing motion. You need to be doing your pelvic exercises standing as well as sitting and laying. Most people will do them sitting or laying down.
Or laying.
Don't only do that is my next piece of advice. Go then from a seated position on the ball to a standing position and do them, if you want to do them like me, where it's 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes at night while I brush my teeth, that's 4 minutes a day. They tell you to try to do it 2 to 3 times a day, especially while pregnant. That's it. And you're going to brush your teeth anyway, so you won't forget it.
I was like, that's the best mindless way to do it. Yeah, I think that's the best tip, Ali. I think being able to incorporate some of these movements, just for example, anyone that maybe has a sedentary job, grabbing a little Swiss ball or anything around, having it around your desk and being able to perform those things, you're still knocking out work and you're performing some of these movements. And same thing with what you're saying about the toothbrushing. I love that. Being able to do that with a little more awareness. Think of this. If our pelvis is stuck, meaning the joint, you guys, your hips itself, you're never really going to truly have a full extension and really full contraction of any type of glute movement or abdominal movement when it comes down to it. So knowing if you are you're struggling with just being able to even turn on your pelvic floor, probably much more getting some deep some actual myofascial release into your, pelvis area, which does suck. Anyone that's already experienced this, it sucks so bad. Like just trying to increase blood flow, because what are we trying to do here is increase your blood flow around that region as well. So if you can, obviously just trying to open up your hips, doing light stretches, being able to, obviously try to get some little more length and flexibility around that area and region as well.
So another really cool thing for anyone that wants to do something that's evidence-backed and pretty cool and actually makes it a little interesting. And I actually just purchased one because I was like, man, I'm going to give this a go. There is a site called Perifit, Perifit. Now, they actually have a device that is attached to an app on your phone that plays games, and you insert the little device, and then you actually you are actually playing games. It's almost like a Tetris type thing where you are using your pelvic.
That is hilarious. That's going
to all the little things. It's really cool. I think it's going to make it, way more fun to do things, but it's a very modern way too, because you're going to get the data. So you're going to have this device reading data across to you. And the best thing is they've got settings, right? So the different settings in the on the probe, so the thing that you choose for the games that you play and the training that you're going to give your pelvic floor, because this is the training device, it is basically linked to the different types of issues women face. So you can choose postnatal, you can choose pregnancy, you can choose incontinence, you can choose pelvic dysfunction, prolapse. So whatever it is that's relevant to you, you choose, and you have a specific training program for your hoo-ha, which I think
that's individualized if you want to get with it.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to stick to my
I thought I'd get it for and try, because I just thought, why the hell not?
Let us know, Allie.
From the evidence, it significantly increases the rate of return postnatal. So because I'm having a C-section and I'm not going to be able to do much stuff, I thought, well, you know what? I can play some games for the first 6 weeks and get my
make it fun. Why not?
Right.
Well, let us know, because we're going to be interested to find out what that.
But another thing that they really actually promote with this particular product is sexual function, like the increase in strength and the increase in, contraction capacity during sexual intercourse. So
that's like really, the biggest major benefit of this.
Exactly.
I was going to end up having a lot of fun.
Anyone who thinks, hey, you know what, I don't know that I'm going to be able to just sit on a Swiss ball or practice holding my pee in, maybe this is the
You're
one.
a little more advanced. Yeah. And that's a good point to bring up, the fact that some females are probably, I've done these movements, I've already strengthened my pelvic floor to this extent, I've done that, maybe taking it up a notch like Allie is doing.
Yeah, well, also, if you're just someone that likes data,
the reason
I'm looking at it is because, we all know I'm a fucking data geek. I love the fact that this physically tracks your actual rate of contraction and physically shows your improvement in strength over time.
More data collecting is never, it's never hurt. So exactly. I get where you're coming from. And any other female that's listening to this and feels the want to try that out, give us some feedback. I'm very curious. I'm interested in knowing. But going into, I think the other postpartum, like you were actually mentioning, the pelvic floor, how it functions, not just for setting yourself up during pregnancy, but really the recovery side of things.
Yeah, because for me, it's super important, as we no one listening to this would expect anything less from me. I'm prepping for a show straight after, right? So reality is I need pelvic floor function back. I need lower core starting to recruit, because I'm about to have all my muscles sliced and diced yet again. Yeah. So more weakness put through there, so that in the first sort of 12 weeks post clearance to lift again, I can work up to getting back to a big, solid strength block where big, heavy loads are being lifted without compromising, my function, without putting pressure on that area, without giving myself a goddamn prolapse. I want to make sure that I'm in full health everywhere. And it starts from the inside out, right? So this is something you can't see. It is not aesthetic, but it does add to your aesthetic if it is fully functioning and giving you proper stability. There is so many reasons this should be a focus, but it is a very rarely discussed topic, which is why we wanted to bring it up today. And if nothing else, and you're listening to this and you're like, I'm just that chick that when I sneeze too many times in a row, or I cough too much, I'm going to pee myself, or I have to stop walking, cross my legs. Maybe this is a sign that you should checking it out, getting assessed, finding where you're at, and then starting to adopt some of the strategies perhaps that we've talked about that may help. Because, look, I've got no issues discussing all this stuff with all of you, because, hey, it's a really real thing. And
normal. Yeah. This is actually an issue, though. That's the reason why we wanted to bring this up.
For a lot of
we oversee it. Well, I'm going to put myself as an example here, or even multiple clients that will oversee it because it doesn't feel hard. it doesn't, you don't, like you said, you don't feel it very much.
Yeah,
You
so you
don't
don't
really
bother.
know it's there. You work your abs. You're like, ab work, core work. Let's get these abs, let's work the obliques. Let's work our glutes. Let's work our quads. Well, guys, these are all regions that are really actually being very much so worked. Supported, starting from the inside out here is going to be the pelvic floor. And you don't have control of it.
You might not think it's a problem because you might not ever have lifted heavy enough for it to be a problem either, right? So once you start actually getting to a certain point, you're going to know what we're talking about. And this is for people that even have decent pelvic control. You're going to understand that there is still an element of pressure there. So it's 100% definitely something you should get checked. Now this PeriFit, should you decide to look at something like this, actually does have like a assessment mechanism in it. So it will assess in the 5 functions, which is strength, endurance, frequency, release, and accuracy. So that quick versus the long hold. So you could use that if you feel embarrassed and don't want to go to a women's health coach. You can do this shit in the privacy of your own home, and no one even needs to know that you're bored. You know what I mean? Like, there are many options there, but
that's the advanced version. But if you just want to start with something simple, you can literally just do some floor mat work. You can absolutely have the Swiss ball, standing. We got those, 3 different style, I guess, of movements. You can do one on the floor, could literally be tucking in the pelvis, breathing in, controlling, and actually having, like Ali said, breath coming out, knowing that you have that control of the pelvic floor being turned on. Think of like vacuums, right? I think vacuum work is another really good tool just to be able to control not just the core, but also understand the pelvic floor. It's kind of like in unison. So that's all stuff that can be done from a mat. You can do vacuums from standing as well, or even from hinging. I think that the one that Ali mentioned, standing up and just kind of turning it on, is
functional movement, functional load, which I think is important.
Yeah, and the Swiss ball one, I loved that one. I thought that sumo stance
it's cool because you
visualizing
feel correct. You can feel it coming up, and then you actually can feel whether or not it fully releases.
Yes, you totally do.
Don't want to bring it down from, say, level 4 to level 2 or level 4 to level 1 and not get all the way to the ground. It has to come back to the ground. So if you use that visual in your mind and you're thinking about literally going up the elevator, coming out, going back in, coming back down, like you want to be, utilizing those tools to help you recognize where you're at. But literally, I think, look, what we've touched a lot on is the fact that maintaining pelvic floor health is incredibly important, that you want to target these muscles by doing the Kegel exercises, which are the things we've talked about, that you also want to be managing your body weight is another important thing. If you're carrying excessive loads of body weight, the likelihood of having more pressure on that and then more weakness, more dysfunction, potential for prolapse is higher. Also, another thing is, don't go letting yourself be constipated constantly and thinking that's normal, because that also puts a lot of pressure on the whole pelvic function. So
the whole
regular bowel movement is also super important. Like, can't stress that enough.
Bowels, your hormones, guys. I mean, that's a big key here. You already know the hormones are playing a very big role, and just understanding that pressure, like Ali said, is coming from the organs surrounding it, the muscles surrounding it.
And hey, if there are actual allied health specialists that have niche areas of focus of women's health, that's telling you something, right? If you can create an entire profession around this, it's telling you how important it is.
Very true. It's a very problematic area.
It's also telling you that there are specialists to go and see that really know their shit inside this realm. So I would strongly suggest seeking them out. But hey, look, I hope everyone had either a bit of a giggle at the squirt or a bit of a, oh my God, that's me when I laugh or moment. Or, hey, that's really interesting. I'd like to know where I sit. I hope we've given you enough information, enough tools and resources to be able to go and make, some form of action from here. And if not, or if you just, have questions, feel free to DM us. I mean, look, I'm open, as you can tell, I talk about everything. I will always answer anything you have to, send me. And I'm more than happy to, have a one-on-one conversation with someone if they want to have a one-on-one conversation about this. And I've got specialists that I can put you in contact with especially in Australia. And then there are people that I work with that are online that deal with some of my athletes all over the world. So, you know, this stuff isn't, it's
common, you guys. Yes, it's very common. So don't feel alone. And if you aren't dealing with any of these things and you're just trying to learn, you know, maybe some of your clients, if you're a coach that's listening and you're just wanting to make sure, oh man, I should address these things. These are actually so-and-so client has actually these symptoms. So definitely take a look at, you know, those people. And if you're that person, start getting that pelvic floor stronger. You're just going to benefit. It feels so much better for so many other things in life. So not just, you know, holding your urine and not being able to pee on yourself, but so much other positive things. But again, I agree, Ali, if anyone's ever, you know, in just need of wanting a little extra information, please never hesitate to reach out to us. And we really appreciate you guys listening and tuning in. And we will get back on the rhythm of getting these episodes back out to you guys. And we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Queen Divas Pod, on Twitter at Queen Divas 4, and follow our hosts on Instagram, Alicia at Alicia Gowans _WBFF Pro, and Steph at Stephanie Ayala 7. See you all next week.